Every one of us has a microwave. Our report is like a microwave. Your microwave has 30 programs. You only use one. So unless you read all the instructions, I'm not sending you a report anymore.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Brew Digital podcast. I'm Hayden Woods-Williams, a digital marketer here at Brew. I'll be leading today's session. We've got 4 topics to get through today, including a nice piece on nostalgia marketing and a little look at an advert about a peach that's been sending Italy a little bit crazy. I'm Hayden, and this is the Marketers of the Universe podcast. For our first topic, remember who your post and email is for. Hint, it is not you. Our team today discussing this topic will be Mark Bundle. Mark has worked in email marketing for almost a decade, as well as having a background as a lawyer. He is an emailing superstar here at Brew Digital, and is also our local pedantic. So he's always got an opinion that will be very important to listen to. Debbie Gaquitan Jardines Oliveira is a seasoned social media marketer with a diverse background in both the tech and education sectors. She's super creative, super awesome, and super knowledgeable about everything to do with building communities and delivering social media strategy. And Rich Harper. Rich is our current head of marketing. He's the guy who makes everyone tick. He's worked in the digital marketing space for over 16 years, so has an absolute tank of brilliant marketing knowledge to bring to the table. So let's get on with talking about the topic. Question 1, I'm going to start with you, Mark. How can you actually know who your post, your social post, or your email is for? Do you think there are any techniques you can use to put yourself into a customer's place?
If you don't know who it's for, I'd argue you shouldn't be posting, sending, etc. There's definitely different ways of doing it. Make sure you're using personas, scoping out the people that are most relevant for your business. Making sure if you're in social, you're building the right audience. Same for your email list. Make sure you're keeping that clean and nurtured. If you don't know who that's going out to, you really shouldn't be doing it.
Really, it goes down to basic research. In order for you to know your audience, there's no perfect solution. There's no easy way out of it than researching your audience, talking to your product managers, talking to your salespeople, for you to have a better understanding of who your audience is. And it's not about just understanding what their challenges are, needs, their point of view, but also the languages that you speak. That really defines how you craft your post or your content.
What we need to be aware of, we mentioned it right at the beginning there, Mark said about making sure you know your audience and who you're posting to. It's also about listening to your audience. I think as marketers, we do a lot of work on creating personas and creating data segments and stuff that we think is what our customers want to hear. What I don't see very often is taking a customer-centric approach to your marketing, actually talking to your customers, listening, and then building that back into your strategy.
It's nice to see within our own business that is starting to be taken more seriously. There are efforts to build out more how we're talking to our customers, how we're surveying them, how we're requesting personal feedback. So that two-way conversation, I think, where us actually asking them for information and getting it back is really important to how we communicate with people.
I think on social media, we do have the luxury of being very close to our audience. You can post something right now and get a comment within a day. As a business, you can take advantage of that by looking at the profile or the commentaries that you're getting, having a look at like who's commenting, where they're from, what is their likes, what do they not like, what are their posts that they send, what are the things that they engage with. And I think from there, you can take in some insights and bring it back to how your content is. The language is very important because you serve different types of clients. We have e-commerce clients and then we have tech clients. They might have the same challenges, but they might say it in different ways.
Without being contrary, why do you need to think of the customer when you're creating digital marketing content? I know the business better than anyone else, so surely my knowledge is the most important thing.
And the worry is so many people think like that. You might know your product and your business better But at the end of the day, you sell things trying to solve a person's pain point or a contact's pain point. They know that pain point better than you do. So if you want to sell to someone, you need to know what they need. And that's why you need to think about them. So you can focus in on their need and show that your product or your service meets that need.
And what if it doesn't meet that need?
Then we don't market to that person. That's the thing. People sometimes forget and just think marketing is everybody. We must target everybody under the sun. We must reach everybody. And it's just not right. What we need to do is to use the old cliche thing, hit the right people in the right channel at the right time. If somebody isn't your ideal customer or isn't going to be a suitable customer for your service, don't try and talk to them. Just try and reach the people that you can actually provide value to.
That is a really important point that Mark raises there as well. From my years of working in agencies and with multiple brands and companies, the one thing that consistently we get when we do discovery workshops and ask the customer who their audience is everyone. And there's certain industries that's more prevalent in, but in general, it's quite a common trait that companies feel that everyone is in their kind of target market. Anyone can buy their product, which is just not true. And that can be Nike trainers all the way down to a specific SaaS product. There is specific audiences that buy those specific products. As a business, you need to make sure you've really honed in on who your ideal customer is and then translate your messaging and your branding and everything else to that customer.
We're running out of time in this section, so I just want to bring this round to giving some actionable tips for someone to go away and do right now. Does anyone have any tips on how we can try and avoid that bias, that self-obsessed way of looking at marketing when you're so embedded in something that can help them improve their content, their marketing, their messaging, whatever it is?
Put yourself in your customer's shoes. And if you can't do that from a neutral perspective, you're too product focused, use feedback groups, use surveys, get the answers directly from your customers. Yeah, make sure you get a client's perspective.
Yeah. Know your customer. Forget personas. Personas are great, but they're just made up. Putting people in boxes doesn't work. The best thing to do, ask your customers, listen to what they're telling you, and then implement that into your communications.
I'll take it in another way. Don't get comfortable. A lot of marketers think that they know what they're doing. They know their audience, and 10 years go by, they're still doing the same thing. And then they go out and realize that they've been left behind. So don't get comfortable. Don't think that you know everything. I make it a point that I always check competitors' social media profiles, see what they've been up to. I look at other industries. What are the latest trends out there? Just to make sure that I know what's happening and you still have a pulse of what's real. Because it is true that you might know your audience, but you do not have control about the environment that they're in, which might affect their needs, their challenges, and what they are looking for from a brand that is giving them the product or services that they need.
Both of those answers are really good. Whether you're someone who has no customers yet, or whether you're someone who has a lot of customers, there's going to be something to take away there. To wrap things up, obviously we can go away and look at researching competitors. That's easy. We can do that on Google. We can do that on the internet. How the hell do we reach customers?
Well, you should have their contact details. They're already taking out your services. This means you can reach out to existing customers through that way. Research is a legitimate interest purpose under GDPR, so you can reach out to them that way. If not, there are plenty of companies that provide focus groups, outreach, that kind of service. So if you can't do it in-house, there are ways to outsource it.
Jumping into our next topic. Is reporting even worth it in your job? We all do it. Probably. We should be. Should we? I don't know. That's what we're going to dig into. And in this section, we have Mark and Rich rolling over their expertise from the last session. Joining us, we've also got Michele Raffaelli, who's worked in sales and marketing for almost 20 years. He's evolved from the offline side into digital. His specialty is now paid media and always having a massive smile on his face. On top of that, we have Jason Morris joining us. Jason initially finished university as a web designer, but quickly turned into an in-house digital marketing and SEO expert. He's worked across the globe with brands such as Citibank and Bupa. Finally, we have Ross Stratton, whose biggest call to fame was winning an egg and spoon race once. He's got over 5 years of digital marketing experience across a number of digital agencies working with big brands such as Vitabiotics, Skyscanner, Emirates, and of course, Adaptivist and the Adaptivist Group. let's start with you, Ross. Reporting, is it worth it?
At one previous agency, which I won't name by name, the format would take us presenting back PowerPoint presentations on a nearly weekly basis that were taking far longer than the actual campaigns to build all the optimizations. So I think in instances like this, it's almost certainly not worth it, because the amount of resource it takes to actually put them together just doesn't make much sense financially. I'm a big fan of automated dashboards where clients can kind of request bits that they want to see, have a play around with things, and then we can just run through the dashboard on a weekly basis. I think that's probably the best way to go.
I have a slightly different opinion. I think reporting is really useful for the clients to get those insights that are needed for them specifically. You can give clients access to tools. You can export all the data. All the tools have so much data and they just kick out so much information. Picking out the specific bits that they need for their work is really powerful, I think.
Nice. It's kind of making me think here about when I go running and whether I put it on Strava or not. You know, if I don't put it on Strava, did it even happen? If I don't report on something, did it even happen?
Yeah, it's exactly that. So if we've carried out a bunch of work, you need to present it and say, look, we did amazing, or we failed here. Take those learnings that can then go into your next campaign.
Nice. Thank you, Jason.
Hayden, can I just drop something in there? From a head of perspective, I see the value in reports as long as those reports are delivering the right information. I think marketing has a bit of a bad rep. And when I say marketing gets a bad rep, is we often utilize these metrics to show success, but we don't necessarily show success in terms of what it means to the bottom line of the company. Jason's correct in the fact that reports are really valuable, but I think as marketing people, we spend far too much time creating reports on stuff that doesn't move the needle in terms of creating attribution to a company's bottom line. And that's where things need to change. And this is nothing new. Impressions, click-through rates, all of the other things that we like to track. One of the nice ones is like, oh, we've received a 300% ROI on this project. But if it's 300% of nothing, then where is the benchmark?
Percentages cover so many sins. Reporting absolutes, percentages just mean you can hide whatever bad thing you want behind a number that looks better than it is.
Yeah, one takeaway, scrap percentages.
I need those to cover my bad bits. So you've spoken about revenue there, and it sounds like revenue is a pretty important thing to be reporting on. Do you think that is the most important thing?
For me, it needs to tie back to the company's objectives, but ultimately, in the amount of times that I go into a company from a consultancy perspective, and I ask the business owner or the marketing director or the sales director, what is the ultimate goal of this business? It's to grow revenue. Whether that's from existing clients and it's looking at their existing base and trying to upsell and create more value out of what's already existing in the business, or whether it's about looking for new channels and bringing in new business, there's not a single company I don't think I've ever come across that is not looking for that next bit of growth. And what is that growth? Ultimately, it comes down to revenue. One of the things is, again, not always necessarily looking at what revenue it generates at that first touch point. What's that first sale? Sometimes, especially in B2B and our world in terms of tech, that initial sale might not be the most profitable bit of business that you do. But then how do you retain that customer and create more value out of that customer?
On that as well, we sometimes get caught in a trap of talking about revenue in terms of we do a lot of lead generation. Branding still has value and should still be reported on. You just need to be a lot more careful with the long-term attribution of it. And yes, attribution can be horrid, but it's worth it in the long run because you can tell where all of your efforts are paying off then, not just the short-term ones.
Michele, I'm interested to see your opinion because I know you're a big fan of making sure that the stories in the data, making sure the data backs up what you are doing.
I am indeed. What made me realize listening to all of you now is that my opinion changed. If you asked me the same question 3 months ago, I would have been like, yes, reporting is like air you breathe. Without reporting, you cannot live. Then GA4 happened and I changed my mind. We've been invited yesterday. We participated to a Google Breakfast workshop where they show us some data, some number for the next Cyber Month. Apparently now, before making a purchase, they estimate people will need 10 interaction This means that we will probably start fighting even more around who generated the conversion. What I realize now is that we don't need reporting, we need trust. I feel every one of us has a microwave. A report is like a microwave. Your microwave has 30 programs, you only use one. So unless you read all the instructions, I'm not sending you a report anymore.
That's amazing.
What I like to do with the reporting is educate the client how it got to that stage. So, for example, there could be a paid campaign. Off the back of that, you do get extra organic. You get all the on-site behavior metrics. So there's things like that that the client needs to understand as well. So I like to kind of unravel it.
Can you even trust the data we're looking at? Google Analytics 4 has thrown a lot of spanners in the works. I'm not sure that's the saying. It's made us look at Universal Analytics and go, was what I was reading even right? We look at things like iOS 14 and beyond, cookies, end of cookies. Like, it is harder to track all these things accurately. So how do we challenge that? How do we tackle that?
There has been plenty of times, particularly Meta, where it's come out that their data has been inflated. So there's always a kind of a touch of caution with this data we're receiving from other platforms anyway in that respect.
Isn't there an email client that just marks everything as opened as well?
iOS 15, the mail privacy protection, I think it's called. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, iOS 15 marks every email as opened, whether it has been or not, which is great fun for marketers.
Yeah, it's a minefield out there, right? Just to round this all up, there's been some really nice points here, really interesting things. I kind of could spend hours digging into this stuff. Should marketing team be looking to improve their reporting? Should they be looking for perfect? What can they go and do right now that's simple and implementable?
I'm going to be controversial here and say drop the MQ out. A marketing qualified lead is a completely useless metric if it's not linked to pipeline. For me, MQ hours are another vanity metrics that's not aligned with the actual business goals. For a marketing person to sit there and go, we've just delivered you 4,000 leads and then sales close one of them. Why? Who cares if you've delivered me 4,000 names if none of it converts? What we should be doing is shifting the mindset more to qualified pipeline. Let's just think about what the consolidated objective is and work together to achieve it.
On to our third topic today. We are looking at one of our favorite marketing campaigns. What we've picked is actually probably an advert that a lot of people may not have seen. I know I wouldn't have seen it if it wasn't for this. An advert from Esselunga in Italy. Esselunga are a supermarket, I believe. And talking to us today, we have Michele again. He's our man who only uses a single mode on his microwave. We've also got Nasha, is from our paid team. She's worked in B2B tech marketing for 3 years with clients such as SAP, Plu, Celigo, and of course, Adaptivist. We also have Debbie back. And I'm going to start with you, Michele. Why is this advert broken Italy?
Thank you, Aidan. I'm very surprised of your pronunciation of Esselunga. Very well done. In the story, it's a little girl who goes to the supermarket with the mother, and in the end, she comes back home with a peach. And that's where the story changes completely, because the little girl prepares her luggage and then leaves to go and spend the next week with the father. So that's the moment where we realize that the couple is divorced. Now, that type of family in Italy has never been shown on national television. You should think about a country where we still have those ads where in the morning the families sit all together, happily having breakfast, smiling to each other. So showing this part of the reality is what actually broke Italy.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that's what broke Italy. That's the most impactful thing. But what are the other things that you love or hate about the advert?
As marketers, we always try to promote the better side of things. We always try to use this good finish of every story. We probably fake reality to make everyone happy, to make sure that everyone is having what they need. In this specific ads which could come from the Apple playbook, basically, because they don't speak about the supermarket at all. It's just this little family going to the supermarket and getting fruit and veg. So they don't talk about the product. They are not advertising who they are, what they sell. They just sell you the emotion. But what touched me was the fact that it's not a sweet story. It's more bittersweet.
Yeah, I can definitely see that bittersweet part of it. There's the bit at the end where she hands the dad the peach. You're almost like grimacing because you see the wider context of that. Debbie, I want to go to you now.
It's interesting viewing this without the context of what is within the culture of Italy. Having lived as well in London, wherein you are already exposed in adverts that do not necessarily take the common route of a single family. It's only a mom and a dad. It could be a homosexual couple and so on. So my view on this advert, to be honest with you, is that I thought that it was quite weak. The role of the supermarket wasn't as strong. So there's no strong brand role to this. Apple can get away with it because Apple is Apple. And so you do not necessarily have to interject the branding at every moment in space to get that this is an Apple advert, whereas a grocery store do not have a luxury to that.
I'm not here to jump into the debate whether it's good or bad, but one thing's for sure, they definitely use emotional marketing. And I agree with Debbie. It's like how Apple does their commercials, weaving their own story that's all about human experiences you can share with a product or brand remaining in the background, but still kind of tugging at your heartstrings.
People only focus a lot on potentially the political message that they projected onto the video itself. It is, sometimes brand does a lot of the strategies like the Apple playbook, girl can do everything. They do a lot of copy paste of these type of strategies. Sometimes they work and sometimes they do not. But sometimes it needs to go down into the authenticity of the storyline itself. And to me, it was a bit of a stretch.
I personally really love the ad because of the emotional appeal, and it definitely got people talking. Not gonna lie, I didn't watch it from a marketer's perspective, and the end of the video did make me feel some type of way because you don't see that sort of broken family dynamics in a mainstream ad. What Michele said, same here, you don't see it in Malaysia. Controversial or not, especially during a difficult economic period, with prices going up, especially in a competitive market. And in this case, in Esselunga's case, like large scale retail sector, they definitely needed to kind of make a strong emotional impact to kind of stand out against a crowded market.
So if you go and look at demand that these are generated, they actually increased demand at very similar level to their highest spike in the past 5 years, which was COVID, the first wave. Is this fair? Maybe a topic for another podcast. What I can say from a data point of view, it did more.
Love this. I love a disagreement. How can someone who doesn't have that glossy finish, who doesn't have that big budget to go and do an advert like this, how do we capture those moments that we recognize ourselves in?
These type of ad recently, there was one who went viral from Norwich Football Club this month. The way they stand out is to pass emotions. So instead of promoting your product, your service, whatever you are selling, go and provide an example of the feelings that this product will give to you if you are going to use it.
I think it's a fine line to tread. As Debbie said, if you don't put your brand front and center, sometimes if you don't have that brand recognition, do you get lost in that? Interested to see what your thoughts are on that, Debbie.
It is an interesting one because there is a line wherein you are just jumping on a trend versus being authentic to the story. Some brands have already received backlash because they are jumping on this trend of girls can. Going back to the question, if you do not have the big budget, how can you have something like this? Again, going back to your customer, what are their challenges? What is the need that they're trying to, fulfill? Potentially looking at the social dynamic right now. What is it that you want to convey?
We are jumping now into our final topic, which is all about nostalgia marketing and whether or not it's in fashion, whether it will always be in fashion. Our team to discuss this one, we're bringing Nasir back into the fold. We're also bringing Ross and his egg and spoon back from our second panel. And we're also joined by Freya Wilcox as well. Freya is a recent university graduate who specializes in branding and communications. She's worked in public relations and social media before she joined Brew, where she is currently our digital marketing intern, training in paid media and email. She is a real superstar. Let's get started. What is nostalgia marketing and how does it work? I'm going to start with you, Freya.
So nostalgia marketing is like a very emotional form of marketing. It banks on the feeling of nostalgia. I think it's very effective. However, I think it's hard to do and you have to know your audience, because something that's nostalgic to me isn't going to be nostalgic to Hayden. Yeah, we have different interests with different ages. You really need to focus on your audience, their demographic, like their age, where they grew up, what's going to feel nostalgic to them. When I was researching for this topic, a big one that came up was Pokemon Go, which I'm sure is very nostalgic for a lot of you guys. Pokemon in general was not nostalgic for me at all.
I remember the conversation a few months ago where we spoke about the fact that Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring was released before Freya was born, and that makes me want to cry because that's nostalgic as hell for me. Ross.
I have a slightly different perspective from Freya, having been born in a different decade and having now seen my entire childhood reduced to a couple of fancy dress party pieces that you can now pick up at the local party store. I think I saw, maybe it was on TikTok, you can now buy Nokia 3310s to go to parties with, and Tamagotchis as well. So that's a slightly depressing thought. But yeah, touching on Freya's point, I think it is always in fashion, nostalgia marketing. But again, it's just finding the right audience. It'll be interesting to see if the slightly more obscure things from my childhood end up being used for nostalgic marketing. I don't know if anyone remembers Baby Wee Wee. That's always a product that stands out as a doll that used to have fake Wiis, and that was a brand campaign that happened. Yeah, I've actually lost my central point.
It's all right. I feel like we need to throw Baby Wee Wee over to Nasir at this point.
I mean, even younger consumers, they have like a fascination with the past. For example, like over TikTok, or even if you walk into a mall, how Y2K, early 2000s fashion consumer products are back on trend. And is very especially like popular among the Gen Zs.
We'll all be wearing flares again soon, right? I think we might already be wearing flares.
Yeah, we're already wearing flares.
Do we think it's a valid way of marketing to people? Or do we think it's just taking advantage of remembering a better time?
Well, I would argue that's all marketing is, really, just taking advantage of your audience in some way. Yeah, we're always kind of playing on biases and preferences that we're hoping our audiences have. So yeah, I think it's a very valid way of marketing.
I think it's a good method of marketing. And I think if you do it right, it can be really effective. But yeah, I just think you have to make sure you get it right and make sure you know who your audience is and what they're going to relate to.
We've seen a lot of nostalgia play out in the movies. We've seen Barbie. We've seen Star Wars beaten to an inch of its life. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are coming back for another movie. We've had Ghostbusters come back. Or how can a brand today who wants to use nostalgia effectively in their marketing, beyond just looking at their audience, is there anything they can do to identify what is going to work nostalgically?
I think brands would need to focus on what was sort of big and iconic. Obviously, like a lot of things that used to work probably won't work now as times have changed. Things have become more acceptable, things have become not acceptable.
Yeah, I think it's probably best to focus on a hook or a trend that happened more recently, just to prevent you alienating a younger section of your audience. I don't think anyone in their 30s was going to be particularly enamored with an ad, including where's the beef t-shirts or leg warmers. So I think that's an important aspect to keep in mind.
I agree with both Freya and Ross, like reintroducing popular products or designs from the past can really create, a sense of
excitement, anticipation among like various consumers from various different eras. And it can also attract new customers who may have missed out on the product's initial release. So
Oh, yeah, I think one brand that's done nostalgia marketing really well actually is Polaroid, because film photography is a massive thing at the moment. And they've re-released their original Polaroid, obviously with a few tweaks to make it easier to use and better quality photos and stuff. But that, I think, obviously invokes nostalgia for people who remember the original Polaroid and like the first few, but also is really hitting the audience of people who are getting back into film photography or starting film photography at a young age.
Just to tie things up, it sounds like nostalgia marketing can be so effective, but it comes with a risk. If you get it wrong, you can look like a Wally, and you don't want to be stuck in Where's Wally Land 20 years too late, right? I can ask each of you very, very quickly, would you use nostalgia in your marketing? Yes or no? Ross, you first.
Yes, depending on the client. In a B2B perspective, it's probably not going to be particularly useful unless we're playing on tech nostalgia. So unless we're maybe toying with the idea of dial-up broadband, which is something everyone remembers, that could be a potential hook.
Nice. Nassia, yes or no?
yes, I love nostalgia marketing, especially when you bring up back old tech stuff. I love thrifting, seeing or looking how like some modern brands are incorporating the old kind of design, like how Samsung has done it with their flip phone.
Freya, yes or no?
Yeah, I think it's really effective and when it's done correctly, and can really be an emotional form of marketing because people make connections with like memories and have associations of like the good old days with certain products. It's just you do need to focus on what was sort of iconic and what was notable and also what is going to work now. Like Ross said, everybody remembers dial-up marketing. Not dial-up marketing, dial-up Wi-Fi?
Broadband.
Yeah, well, I don't remember. I don't remember that, so...
Fab, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We really hope you found some useful snippets in our session and are able to go and put them into your own marketing. Thank you also to the Brew Digital team for doing all the research and their input into today's session. Make sure to go and check out our past episodes. Subscribe on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts, and we'll see you on the next one. I've been Hayden, and this has been the Marketers of the Universe podcast.